buy once, cry once, because if you don't and you buy the cheap thing to try and save money, you end up having to replace it all and it costs more in the end and you end up crying twice.
Yep.
Or many times even.
This is the Self-Recording Band Podcast, the show where we help you make exciting records on your own, wherever you are, DIY style. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band Podcast. I am your host, Benedict Hein, and I'm here with my friend and co-host, Malcolm Owen Flood. How are you, Malcolm?
Hello, I'm great. I'm vaccinated.
Oh, that's good news. That's exciting news. Yeah, totally. I'm still not, unfortunately. Things are really slow here in Germany. So,
is it Germany specific or is it like Europe in general? How's that all going?
Not entirely sure. We were supposed to get everyone vaccinated, but very soon actually. But then they didn't receive the doses that they should have received for some reason. And I don't know if that's just Germany or Europe, but my appointment was canceled basically because of that reason. So
wow, dang. Well, hopefully it comes around soon because it has been exciting over here in Canada. In BC specifically, we got our little announcement, our restart plan, and it's like the light. You can literally see the light at the end of the tunnel now. It's so exciting. All the musicians I know are starting to book gigs again, and everybody's springing into action. It's really, really cool.
Wow, that's so cool to hear. Yeah, let's just hope it stays the way that way. But I'm really starting to become more optimistic now. So
yes,
if you're listening to this a year from now, we'll see if we're right or wrong. As of now, it's end of May 2021. Maybe, I don't know, the apocalypse is near in a year or so. I don't know.
Yeah, this will be a historical document.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen how wrong these guys were.
Yeah. My wife is fully vaccinated, and I actually just returned home from getting a quick test done because we're leaving for a short vacation tomorrow to Austria, and to go over the border, you need to test or be vaccinated, or you had to have COVID, one of the three. And the kids don't need a test. My wife is vaccinated, but I am not, and I had a test today, and I'm negative, so I can go. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I bet you're going to have a good time in Austria.
Oh, yeah. Totally. I'm so overdue for a vacation, and I can't wait. Yeah, it was pretty exciting. There's another exciting thing that happened today that I need to tell you, and that is, it's not really, it doesn't have anything to do with you or with the listeners, but I think it's exciting, so I wanted to share it. I bought my daughter a piano today, a digital piano, which is pretty exciting for me because I remember when I got my first one, and so she had this little toy keyboard more or less, and she practiced on that, and we did a couple of I gave her some lessons, and she really enjoyed it and did her homework and everything and practiced. So I promised to buy her a proper one if she does that, and now she gets it's not a super expensive one and not a real piano, but it's this digital piano with 88 keys and weighted real keys and all of that.
Awesome.
And I can't wait. And it's also cool because I don't have one at home anymore. Mine is at the studio, and I hope I will play more if there's one in
yeah, that'd be great. That's really cool. I bet that is quite amazing to see your daughter learning and playing music.
Oh yeah, totally. That's one of the cool things of I don't know, if your job is also your passion. It can be a blessing and a curse, but sometimes it's pretty cool because I just know what to buy, or I know I'm excited about these things, and I can I don't know what it is, but it's it's cool to do something as for a living that you also enjoy so much in your personal life. Sometimes it's not as cool, but it typically is.
Yeah, sometimes it's definitely not so cool. It goes both ways. In this case, very cool. That's great. Glad to hear that, man.
Yeah, cool. Other than that, I don't know what's up in your what has happened this week. We are not recording on a Monday, which is always a little confusing. So
it is confusing. Yeah, I don't think I've bought any gear this week, so I managed to successfully make it through a week without more new gear. So that's pretty cool. Nice work, Malcolm.
Yep.
But other than that, I've just got I've had a lot of mixes coming out over the last month or two that I've just been so proud of that have been done for so long. So it's been like this great release period of me of all this work. I'm really proud of finally seeing the light of day. So that's been awesome.
Oh, yeah.
That's good. Other than that, I'm so into running, man, which I know you're a runner as well. But I'm like getting really into it. I'm training for a half marathon right now.
Really cool.
Just going out as much as I can. I got these crazy toe shoes, and I'm full on running nerd these days.
Oh yeah, I have gear, and yeah, I did actually purchase gear, not music gear, but running gear this week because if you said
I did too.
Okay, cool. What did you get? What did you get?
I got Vibram V Alphas, which are like they're kind of hybrid toe shoes for road and trail, and I'm stoked on them. I'm loving them.
Yeah, I'm a minimalistic like runner as well. Like I have like minimal shoes and barefoot shoes. I don't specifically like the toe shoes. I haven't tried them much, but I have some minimal shoes, but with like one like toe box. And this week I went completely minimal and bought like running sandals.
Awesome.
Like there are the Luna ones, and then there are Shama sandals, I think they're called. And I got those.
Which one did you go with? The Shama ones?
The SHAMMA.
Shama sandals. I gotta have a look at this.
Yeah. There is. I don't know if you've read Born to Run.
I just finished it like a month or so back.
Yeah, and the Tarahumara, like this tribe in Mexico, I think they used to build these sandals, and they run like ultra marathons with them, and it's pretty much like, just something to prevent your feet from like getting hurt from rocks and stuff. Like it's not a real shoe; it's just a protection thing underneath your feet, but you're essentially running barefoot.
Yeah. That's really cool. I haven't actually seen these ones, but they look pretty awesome. I'm very curious. Yeah, I'm so into it. I was having like some pretty bad IT band issues with running, and it, like less than like a week into switching to minimalist shoes, it was gone, and I can run so much further now. I'm super stoked. I know this probably sounds just dreadfully boring to all of our listeners, but the Tarahumara is actually fascinating. As how like these people are just elite athletes, and they run in sandals.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
It the type of folks that can run down deer.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
just insane.
Yeah, totally. It's insane. My wife already hates me for buying these sandals because I'm gonna take them to our trip to Austria, and when we go hiking and stuff, I'm gonna wear these sandals, no doubt. And like, she's like, I don't know you when we're there. You know?
They look far more cool than toe shoes.
Yeah,
I look like I'm wearing like I don't even know.
I bet though the Austrians will be like, oh yeah, the Germans, like they go to the mountains with sandals, right? You know, like. But yeah, we'll see. Anyway, like that's so cool to hear because like I totally love the minimalistic running thing. So actually, it didn't make it through the week without buying something.
No, I actually bought pretty expensive toe shoes.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's funny.
Other than that, when it comes to buying gear, we have a pretty cool episode for you today.
Yeah, if we can't buy gear, we're going to talk about buying gear.
Exactly. We're going to talk about nothing but buying gear today. No, we're going to help you build a recording studio on a budget. We're going to talk about like different tiers, different price categories of equipment, and we give you some recommendations. It's going to be a pretty extensive list episode, so it probably is like it would be best for you if you would like grab a notepad, take notes, or like go to the show notes. It's the selfrecordingband.com/68, where you find this list of things that we recommend. But maybe you want to take some notes and then do your own research after that. Please keep in mind that this list that we're going to give you is not complete, like not at all. It's just our personal like recommendations, stuff that we've tried, stuff that we think sounds good. There's much more out there. It's highly subjective as well. We might forget something that we like and know of and just didn't think of. So please forgive us if we didn't mention anything that you think is great. But I think we'll give you a pretty good starting point. And you can always do your own research. You can test things, hear them in your own environment, send them back if you don't like it. I don't know. But just do your own research. That's what I wanted to say. And don't assume that this list is complete or that this is the ultimate recommendation, because it can't be. It's just too subjective.
Yeah. This is kind of exactly like you said with buying a piano for your daughter. You know what to look for because you have all this experience through your career. And that is the exact same advantage we're trying to give you, is that we've used so much of this stuff and figured out what we don't think is good value and what we think is amazing value. And it's pretty easy to spend money on something that you end up having to just upgrade later, and or doesn't do the job you thought it would, and all this stuff. And there's so much marketing out there. So this is all based on experience, which is great.
Absolutely. Now, I want to give you something in addition to this episode, and that is a gear guide that has been on my website for quite a while, and you might even have it already, but it was kind of outdated, and I updated it. So the 2021 version of my free Essential Gear Guide is now available, and if you go to theselfrecordingband.com/gear guide, you can download that completely for free. It's a PDF. It's like a list like the one we're going to give you today, but with a little more info, stuff that you can... we're going to give you that info as well today, of course, but you can just read it there. It's like in a nice PDF format, and just go to theselfrecordingband.com/gear guide. Download that. It's a great way to start, and it also keeps you from wasting money, because if you buy the wrong stuff, because you're not informed or because you don't really know where to start, you're going to end up buying twice or even more times, and you're going to return stuff. You're not going to be satisfied, and it's going to be very, very expensive in the end. So buy the right stuff right away and use a guide like that as a starting point. theselfrecordingband.com/gear guide.
Do it.
Yes.
Nike, just do it.
Do it. All right. Let's start. So
all right.
We're going to go through this. Like, we're going basically going down the signal chain. So we're starting with mics. Now, Malcolm, there are different categories of mics, and there are also, of course, different like budget categories.
Yes.
Where do we start? Like, what's the bare minimum?
I think we'd be doing our podcast a disservice if we didn't first say the SM57 is one category, and then there's everything else.
Yeah, 100%.
And you only need that one. No, we're going to go deeper than that.
By the way, you said once in an episode, I don't remember which one, but you said once that you wanted to do a record just with 57s, just to prove the point. Yesterday, I heard an interview with Vance Powell. Vance
Also
Powell great. On Recording Studio Rockstars with Lit Shaw. And in this podcast, Vance, I can't remember the name, but he mentioned a friend of his who actually did it, and he made, I think, 2 records just with 57s. So fantastic. Someone has done it, and I'm curious how it sounds. I haven't heard, but I just thought of you when I heard that.
That's great. That's great. Actually, there's a duo called, this isn't really like doing a full rock band, but there is a acoustic duo called the Milk Carton Kids. Damn, they're good if you haven't checked them out already. But they did some records with 4 SM57s, and they're like, literally facing each other in the room playing the guitar and singing, and one on the guitar and one on the voice for each of them. And it's like, it sounds great, but they're also just unstoppable musicians. So it would have sounded great no matter what.
That helps.
Yes.
Awesome.
But I got to check out that podcast episode for sure.
Yeah, tons of good stuff in there. Also about the live band recording topic that we just covered in a recent episode. Cool. He talks a lot about that and about the Glyn Johns thing where he lines up the amps and drums in one line, like on stage and stuff that we've been talking about in our episode. He explains it in this one. And it's a pretty cool podcast episode. So you should listen to that.
All right. Well, on the 57s, we're talking about dynamics, all-rounder mics first, I think. Really, you just can't go wrong with the 57 here. You've got the Audix i5 on here as well, Benny. We got an outline, by the way, that we're reading off, and that's definitely a great mic. I haven't used that other one though. Which one is that?
That's a company's called Heil Sound. I love their mics. They're my favorite dynamic mics. Actually, they have great large diaphragm dynamics but not so much for not like the SM7 or the Procaster, but more for instruments. I think their PR30 and PR31 are the as far as I know, at least they claimed that it's the largest diaphragm in a dynamic mic, and that for whatever reason gives you like it gives them at least a distinct sound. I wouldn't say it's because of that or it's better because of that, but they just sound freaking amazing. And the PR20 is a standard dynamic mic, not a large diaphragm one. It's like an SM57, same price category also, I think. I like it for handheld vocals. Some vocalists just like to have their mic in their hands. That's how they perform best. And this one gives me the least amount of like noise from like grabbing the mic and stuff. And also it just sounds really good. And I love it on snare. I love it on amps. It's just a 57 alternative that I really, really love. And their PR31 is probably my favorite dynamic mic of all. It's a little more expensive, so it's not on that list here. But it's for a dynamic mic, it's pretty expensive. But like not super, but yeah. But it's cool. I just love it. And the PR20 is the one here in the standard all round category.
Sweet. Yeah, I don't think I've even seen one of these in person before. They're just not a thing over in Canada, I don't think. Okay. I'm going to have to keep an eye out, though. That is cool. But yeah, essentially, the long short of it is that you get something out of 57 par, and you're going to be fine and have a mic that's going to get you through a lot. My 57 gets used on acoustic guitar, on vocals sometimes, on guitars, like electric guitars every time, on drums all the time. Just pretty much you can't really get through a recording without having an all-rounder dynamic mic on hand. You're going to need one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. And I would recommend buying a handful of these actually if you record a full band. Like if you're just on your own with your guitar amp, one will be good. If you are recording a band, you can't go wrong with like 3 of those or whatever because you can put them on toms, snares, amps, whatever. So definitely do that instead of buying one of these drum mic kits or whatever, because you're going to end up not liking some of those mics and replacing them, and they just go with some of these all-rounders. They will just work and they will be better than whatever is in those mic kits usually.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a saying in every industry probably, but especially the music one, where it's buy once, cry once, because if you don't and you buy the cheap thing to try and save money, you end up having to replace it all and it costs more in the end and you end up crying twice. And or many times even. And yeah, those kits are almost always pretty awful. I'm sure there's good pieces in each one, but more or less I strongly agree with Benny here. If you kind of follow this episode and grab the individual mics you need to do the job, it's going to be a much better result for not only drums, but everything. And there's no reason to have mics that are just for drums. Like all good drum mics are also great on other things, maybe with the exception of kick mics.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. Which brings us to the next category, which is kick mics, because although they are typically not that great as all-rounders, if you record real drums, it's probably worth getting one because, I mean, you can record a kick with an SM57, but it's probably quicker, easier, and better to use something that gives you the low end in a way that a kick drum mic does. So, and also some of them have like a frequency curve that just fits bass drums just well. And so, I don't know, I would just recommend, if you have the budget, I would recommend getting one of these. And kick mics can be like the typical ones that have always been there, like the AKG D112. Some people hate it, others love it. I don't know where you are on this, Malcolm.
I'm not crazy about it, honestly.
In some
have you ever used the older one? I think it's the D12.
That's better.
That's better.
Yeah.
It is better. It's kind of once you hear it, you just can't like the D112 anymore. But
it has a very distinct sound. Like you can tell when a D112 is used. Sometimes though, the knock it has can be really cool. I like combining it with others because it has this 100 hertz like upper bass knock that I really like. But it doesn't really have a lot of subs. And also the attack sound, it has a weird point, like a weird, like a 3K, 4K thing that really sticks out. And sometimes that's just what you need. Other times I don't like it as much. Depends. But it's still a tried true classic kick drum mic, and it's been on tons of rock records, and so it's worth mentioning.
Definitely.
The Audix D6 is also, some people hate it, some love it. It's very EQ'd. It's a modern metal sort of mic. It has a very pronounced top end and a lot of sub lows.
Yeah.
Scoop mid range. Sorry?
I think I love that mic. It's just does what I was gonna do anyways.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah. It's built like a tank as well. Like
Yeah, totally. The one that's not on here is actually the AKG D12 VR. It's their like newest one. That's definitely that's a very high end kick mic. It's like probably $600 or $700. And it's awesome. I just like whenever I can get my hands on one of those, that's my first choice for sure.
Totally. And then like for me, it's the Telefunken M82 that I really enjoy, really love. It has this EQ switch that really works well, and it's just a great overall mic. But again, these are all mics. It's a matter of taste more than anything, I think. I think the D112 is probably on the more affordable side compared to some of the others.
Yes.
What I also really like is a PCM, like the Beta 91A by Shure. It's a condenser, but you just put it in the kick drum and it just lays in the kick drum. You don't need to stand for it. It's like a pressure zone mic, a PCM. Sounds really awesome. A lot of attack, pretty flat bottom end response. I would say. I just like it.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't really got to use many of those, or actually any of those. And I would like to. They've always kind of intrigued me.
Yep.
I think for most of our listeners, the budget, like that SM57 equivalent is what they're looking for. So probably that D112 is a great place to start. But the other Shure, I can't even think what the model is, but Shure has a kind of equivalent model.
The Beta 52, I think. Is that?
I think you're right. And that'll get you through as well. That's a pretty good mic.
Actually, we should have totally mentioned that. It's 160 euros or so. So it's also in the budget category, but that's actually really great. It's a pretty popular mic for live applications, but it's a really great all-round kick drum mic. So definitely look into that as well.
Totally. And I'm trying to prioritize things as we talk through them, and like that the dynamics. We said get a handful of those if you're doing drums and stuff because you'll need them all. I think the kick mic's a little lower on the priority list because you could get by with throwing a SM58 or whatever you need in there just to get by, but you won't regret having one. Like we said, it's going to do a better job at a kick drum. And people do use them on bass amps occasionally. So it's not totally just a one-trick pony.
Yeah, totally. If you really can't afford a kick drum mic and you don't think the SM57 you have or whatever sounds great, I would focus on using something that isolates the kick as much as possible and gives you a really clear attack, because you can always then trigger and use a sample. So if you really don't have anything that sounds cool, just capture it in a very clean and isolated way so that you can trigger off of it. Like, just do that and ignore how it sounds, basically.
Agreed.
Yeah. Then, okay. Other mics that you should have probably, the only exception, and you can skip this mic category if that's you, is if you are at home in your home studio on a laptop with a small interface and all you do is like program drums, record DI guitars, and maybe do vocals, then you need one mic, basically. The categories of mics that we're talking about now are only relevant if you are recording real amps or real instruments, bands, stuff like that. So one thing that you need at some point, I think, is like either a large diaphragm dynamic mic or a large diaphragm condenser mic. So something for vocals, basically. I mean, an SM57 can also be used for vocals, but there are like vocal mics that work really, really well. And with the most common thing is probably the large diaphragm condenser mics that you've seen on countless pictures and videos of studios. The thing with those is there's not really a really good budget category. There are some exceptions that are cheaper and good, but usually with those, the more you spend, the better it gets, and then it gets highly subjective. So in the upper category, there's no clear recommendation. You just need to try it, and if you are going to spend that much money, you should try and listen for yourself anyways. In the lower category, there are some mics that are worth trying, but it depends on the voice, I guess, if they fit or not. So I have had pretty decent results with an Audio-Technica AT2020, which is probably the cheapest on this list. It's below $100, like euros, I think. But it can work. And then there's the Aston Origin and Spirit, which we both think are great, I think, right?
Yeah. I've recently got turned on to these after hearing about them for ages. They're great. They're built like tanks, and I thought they sounded just fine. So
they look
definitely
cool as well.
Look into the Aston stuff. I was definitely impressed with them. you always hear like there's kind of fads with microphones, and you're like cruising the forums, and all of a sudden Aston starts showing up in all of these kind of garage recording situations, and everybody's saying they're the best. And I just kind of thought it was going to fizzle out, but they've really kind of stuck around for quite some time now, being popular, and people saying that they're just blown away by the value. And then finally trying a few of them, I'm pretty impressed. Seems like a really good value, bang for buck kind of mic.
Yeah, totally agreed. Then there is like this medium. Sorry, go on. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say that we're talking about large diaphragm condensers, but on this podcast, we generally do steer people towards large diaphragm dynamics instead. And I want to refresh people on why that is, because most people immediately want to grab a large diaphragm condenser because that's what you see on every, you watch a documentary of your favorite band, there's some really expensive tube mic in front of them. So everybody wants to go buy a mic that looks like that because it feels like they're doing the right thing. But the reason we're always recommending large diaphragm dynamics instead, like the Shure SM7B, is they're going to be more versatile for your situation. And again, we are not in professional studios when we're using these mics. And if your space isn't treated and doesn't sound great, you're going to be kind of fighting yourself with a large diaphragm condenser versus large diaphragm dynamics, which kind of takes the room out of the equation to a certain degree. So I guess we're recommending large diaphragm condensers, but I think we really recommend large diaphragm dynamics.
Yes.
But it's kind of like, if you're going to get a large diaphragm condenser, here are some options.
Yes, totally. Absolutely. I 100% agreed. It's the reason why we use large diaphragm dynamics on this podcast, because like, I mean, in your room, you could use whatever probably, but I'm here in my office at home, not in my studio. And I have treated it a bit now, but with a condenser mic, you would hear a lot more of the room, and it just wouldn't sound very direct and clear. So I'm using a dynamic mic here. So yeah, Malcolm is using a Procaster by Rode. I'm using an SM7. They are all in the same, more or less the same price category, I think. They're not super cheap, but also not really expensive compared to good large diaphragm condensers.
Exactly.
So before you buy a cheap condenser, consider buying one of those. They probably cost the same and might be more versatile, better suited for your room, and sound better maybe even, and easier to treat afterwards, not as sibilant. Because cheap condenser mics also tend to have this harsh top end sometimes that is hard to get rid of, like S sibilances, like S noises, sibilance. Holy shit, I can't talk today.
Sibilance on that shit.
Shit, yeah, exactly. Sibilance, shit. So, but you don't get a lot of sibilance because I'm using a dynamic mic. So,
yeah, it's nice and smooth.
Exactly. Yeah. So there is the SM7, there's the Procaster by Rode, there's the Aston Stealth. So once again, Aston here. There is the RE20 by Electro Voice, I think. Yeah.
Yep. That's another great one for sure. They're just awesome. You mentioned that I could use a large diaphragm in my space because it is really treated, but even then, my laptop fan's going off right now, and that would be an issue, right? Like they're really sensitive. So these are just such a blessing. Having a great sounding large diaphragm dynamic, you will not regret having that, and also great on drums and guitars and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, even if you're starting out with the cheaper ones like the Podcaster by Rode, even that one is great. Like it's pretty cheap. I prefer the Procaster, but the Podcaster is a pretty good mic. It works also great on snare or amps, but also for like vocals, it can totally work. So this category is worth looking into.
Yeah, and they're like $150 or something. Yeah. It's like really affordable. And $150 in a large diaphragm condenser is going to be garbage.
Yes, exactly.
Like it's going to be bad sounding, not just not great.
yeah, exactly. And I got the name wrong. It's not called Podcaster. It's called PodMic, I think.
PodMic,
the PodMic and the Procaster. That's what they call it. Yeah. Okay, but there are a couple of mics that are not super expensive in the condenser category that I still want to mention. There's one, not many people, I haven't heard many people mention it or recommend it, but I just love it, and it's been around forever, I feel like, but it's super cool. It's the Sennheiser MK4. I don't know if you've ever used that.
Have not.
To me, it is the all-rounder. Like other than an 87, a U87 or so, which is pretty expensive, but a great all-rounder. Other than that, this is the only real all-rounder that I can think of, or maybe the 414 is one, but that one's cheaper. It just works. It's great on acoustic guitars. It's awesome on vocals. It's pretty flat and pleasing sounding, so it's not as hyped.
Right.
It's great. It's a great room mic. It works on kick out. It can take level. You can put it in front of a guitar amp. Like it's just a super great, well-made condenser mic that's not too expensive. So I highly recommend that one.
Awesome. Yeah, the Audio-Technica 4040 and up kind of range. With Audio-Technica, the higher the number, the kind of the higher quality their mic is generally. Like the 4050, for example, is another one they do, which I think is just a multi-pattern 4040. And it's one of my favorite large diaphragm condensers. It just sounds so natural. And it's just going to be like, if I wanted to sound like what I hear when I'm in the room with them, I can use that mic and I know it's going to be quite close. So that is... The price range of those, like the Sennheiser and the AT4040, is pretty close to like a Shure SM7B. So they're kind of in the same range, just to give people an idea. And
Sennheiser is a little cheaper, I think, even. It's below $300 here in Germany.
Nice. Yeah, cool. Yeah, and then we got a couple more. Like there's the Warm Audio FET47. That's definitely a great mic. And the AKG 214 or 414. Those are great mics as well. And obviously you can go upper than that, like these were all like 1,000 or less, and if you go over it, 1,000 up, and obviously you can go as high as you want. They're going to be an awesome mic at that point generally. Like if you're spending more than $1,000 on a large diaphragm condenser, it's probably going to be a really fantastic mic. Again, it might not do what you want in your space, so we're kind of hesitant to recommend going that direction unless you have like a treated vocal space or environment that you can use it.
And also you absolutely need to try it because it might be the completely wrong choice for your voice. You can use like a $10,000 microphone and it might not work as well as a $500 microphone if it's just not for your voice. Like people have like, again, sibilance is very different from one person to another. And a couple of other things too. They are in general fantastic mics, and they probably sound good, whatever you like in almost every situation. But sometimes they're just not the right choice, and you got to try and test and find the right one for your voice. And then if you can afford it and buy such a mic, then it's going to be fantastic. Of course, it's highly subjective.
Yeah, having been lucky enough to work in so many studios with huge mic lockers. I can definitely testify to that. You often grab the shiniest, most expensive one first because it's like, oh, I love using this stuff. It's exciting for me. It looks cool for the client. But then sometimes you just have to take it down right after because you're like, wow, that doesn't sound good at all.
Yep, can happen. Yeah. All right, cool. Then SDCs, small diaphragm condensers. You probably need a pair of these at some point if you're recording a band, again, like real things.
It's a very good thing to have. Overheads is kind of the classic situation, right? You're going to have like a Space Pair or an XY. You'll love that. It could be great for rooms as well. Also, they're great on acoustic guitars. And you know what? Some of them aren't even great on electric guitar amps and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think you'd be happy to have them.
They are the ultimate all-rounders to me. And honestly, sometimes a small diaphragm condenser can even be cool on vocals. People just don't do it for whatever reason. But small diaphragm condensers are typically pretty flat. They are pretty like linear sounding. There are more hyped mics out there, of course, but some of them are just, they give you pretty much what happens in front of the mic. And they take EQ really well, and you could potentially record a great vocal with a great small diaphragm condenser mic. So I've recorded voiceover stuff in the past for like commercials and stuff like that when I was still doing that. And sometimes I ended up using one of these because it just worked.
Cool.
The noise floor is a little higher than with the large diaphragm condensers usually. That's one that might be an issue for stuff like that, but they can totally work. Like they are just very good all-rounders. You can use them on anything.
Right. Yeah, I personally love using small diaphragms on bass sources, actually.
Yeah.
They have a very tight low end generally, and that can be cool. So your instinct's usually to go with a big mic for bass, but sometimes you can mix it up and get some really cool stuff.
That's a myth, actually. That's interesting that you bring that up, because people really think, and I did that myself as well, that like the more low end you want to capture, the bigger the mic, or like the bigger the diaphragm, the more low end you get, or whatever, or the bigger it sounds. But that's just not really the case. What happens is the bigger the diaphragm, the slower the mic is. So it could sound a little more like fat or lazy, if you will, like full, whatever, because the thing just doesn't move as fast. But again, it's like a very, very thin diaphragm, so the difference is not really that big. But with the small diaphragm condensers, they can reproduce all the frequencies down to the very lowest, just as the large diaphragm condensers can. But they typically are a little quicker, which probably is what you described as the tight low end. You still get transients and punch in the low end, and it's a little more focused, a little tighter and precise. And that can be really, really cool. So don't assume that your low end is going to be fuller, better, bigger, whatever with a larger mic. Doesn't have to be the case.
Totally. Yeah. All through this conversation, we've been talking about all of these mics and why you kind of need one of each, at least. But that is all, again, through the scope of you recording like a full drum kit or something. So all of this is, of course, circumstantial to what you need for your situation. Again, if you're just a bedroom pop producer, you need one, maybe, right? Or if you're like instrumental guitar music, you technically don't need any. You're good to go. But if you're doing drums, you need two of something, probably, right? Like almost everybody likes a stereo drum kit. So you're going to need something for overheads at the bare minimum, and that's two mics. And that should probably either be two small diaphragm condensers or two large diaphragm condensers. And if we're going from personal experience and bang for your buck for value, you're going to have a much better result putting that money into small diaphragm condensers, in my experience.
Yes, absolutely. So examples of those mics would be, I think the classic thing that everyone recommends is the Neumann KM184. They are not crazy expensive, but also not really cheap, but they just get the job done. Like they work on anything and everything. I don't think they are particularly exciting sounding. They sound good, but nothing that like it's super exciting, but they just get the job done, and they are a very high quality mic. So that's a recommendation you can't really go wrong with.
Seem to be durable, which I think is important for an overhead with drumsticks. They reproduce really nice. I think cymbals sound pleasant in them, and that's like really my main requirement for a set of overheads is how cymbals translate. And I don't think they hype over the high end too much or anything like that. So very usable, great mic.
Yeah. Now, then in the upper category, there is basically two camps for me. There's the KM184s and similar sounding mics, and then there is the ones that are sort of like the original 84s, which have a little more like a darker top end. Many people prefer those over the 184s. You don't get them as easily. I think they don't make them anymore. But there are things like the Warm Audio clone, the 84s, or the Telefunken M60, which is also has a transformer, I think, and is sounding a little darker, a little dirtier, if you will, not as precise. Totally depends. All great mics. Again, in the upper category, sky's the limit. Choose whatever you like. You can't go wrong with the 184s. But since this is called how to build a recording studio on a budget, or a home recording studio on a budget, we're going to talk about those mics now. And this category is actually interesting because other than with the large diaphragm mics, there are a couple affordable ones that I really think we can recommend.
Yeah. The first up is the only one on this list that I actually have experience with, but it's the Rode NT5s. So it's like the most popular Rode pencil mics for sure. These are really popular mics, just period. They are amazingly great for how little they cost. They really did it. Rode's a good company for that. They really make good stuff.
Totally. Yeah, agree. Octava MK012, I like those. Those are Russian mics. I really like those. They have, I think you can do that with the Rode as well, right? You can change the capsule, like the polar pattern, if you buy a different capsule and just
I don't know,
change it. You can do it with the Octavas anyway, and the same price point, sound pretty similar to me. I sometimes prefer ones over the others, but like they are pretty similar. Both work. Then there is the Lewitt, I think it's called Lewitt LCT 140 Air. I have tried those ones. They are even cheaper, and they surprise me pretty much. Like those sound really great for what they cost. So
cool.
Recommend them.
Cool.
Lewitt Mics in general is good company. I haven't tried all of their mics, but everything I've heard so far has been surprisingly good. And then there's the SE Electronics SE8, also pretty cheap, but also really great. And I'm a big SE Electronics fan. Actually, I love their ribbons and some other things they make. And those mics are affordable, sound awesome, and pick any of those four, and I think you'll be happy. So
very cool. Yeah, you just said ribbon. And I'm like, oh, that's not on our list, but it doesn't need to be on our list. We won't go there.
No, exactly. Like this is going to be longer than we thought it would be, this episode anyway. So let's skip the ribbon.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with ribbon mics right now, though. But.
Me too. But ribbon is also, I mean, let's real quick, without a clear recommendation. If you have the budget and you have everything else that we cover here in this episode, then go buy a ribbon. Or if you really want that sound like more than anything else, then buy a ribbon. They are darker usually. They are smooth. They have a sound. They are not. They don't give you like an exact representation of what's going on in front of the mic. Usually, they are more colorful, which is beautiful. Often, and there are cheap and expensive ones that are great. But it's hard to recommend one because they all sound completely different. I've had very cheap ones that sounded great. I had very expensive ones that sounded great. Totally different, totally up to you, and a matter of like taste and vibe and what you're going for. So
yeah, they're fun, but they're kind of splurgy. And that actually our next category is kind of along the same lines, modeling mics. This is kind of a newer technology, and we both have one actually. Is yours working right now?
Yes,
I remember you had issues.
Mine is working. I returned it.
Right.
I wanted them to repair it, like at the shop where I bought it. They sent it back and said that it's not broken, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure it is. And then I tried it again, and it was still broken. And I said, like, yes, it is. And they couldn't hear the noise that I was hearing. They said they tested it and it worked fine. And I was like, no, it's like really quiet and there's a lot of noise. So I sent it back again. Then they sent it too late to the US. They confirmed that it was broken, and I got a new one. It took forever, but I got a new one. And the service was great at that shop. That the tech just couldn't find whatever, but like the service people were awesome. So I don't want to, like, it's all good. But the mic we're talking about is the Slate VMS. And also, I don't think that it's a common thing that they break all the time. Not that you think, like, it's because I really like it, actually. So, and I actually would recommend it. I think, as with all like mass market products, and this is one of those, you can always get a bad one. And I think that happened to me. Like, they sell so many of those, and which is why they can do it at this price point. And if you are lucky, you get one that works. And if you are really unlucky, you can get one that doesn't work as well. So, but I hear mostly good things about them, and I like it. So I definitely recommend it. It's not the cheapest, but you get basically a mic locker in one mic. You get a mic collection. And I'm really still, to this day, like, a lot of people don't like it, but I really still am convinced and surprised by how they sound. I just think they are great, period. I just think they are.
Yeah, I've got one as well. And it came in just under $1,000, I think, Canadian. And it is a great mic. I use it. It's my only large diaphragm condenser in my locker right now. And it's so versatile because with the modeling stuff, it pretty much allows you to like select the profile of whatever mic you want. And well, it does. I don't really feel like it does that. I don't feel like I've got a new mic in front of me. I feel like I have a lot of options in front of me. And maybe it's not quite like another mic, but it is different enough that I have never struggled to find something that works with each singer that's been in front of me so far. Which is awesome.
Yeah, and I think actually that without any emulation, it actually sounds pretty good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. So it's a cool thing, and there's other ones. I know Antelope Audio makes a couple things now, and then there's Townsend as well that does something with the UA stuff, and it's becoming more popular and better and better. I know Slate has other mic packs you can get. So like I could grab some vintage mics they've modeled from Blackbird Studio, I think, it's pretty amazing technology. Yeah. So if you want like a buy once, cry once large diaphragm, they make it. And these I think I would totally recommend going that route. It's really versatile and they are good. And actually Slate and Antelope both make small diaphragm. Modeling mics as well, which is really cool.
Yes, and I got the name wrong because VMS was what it was called, the VMS, when they launched it, the virtual microphone system, or the plugin is still called that. But the
Right.
mic is actually the ML1 is the large
Yes,
diaphragm, and the
right.
ML2 is the small diaphragm condenser. Yeah, it comes with the modeling software and all that, and you don't need a dedicated preamp anymore. They sold it with their preamp, but you don't need that. And like you the only requirement is you have to have a modern linear clean preamp, which is the case in most interfaces, and those are good enough these days that you don't need this separate preamp.
Definitely.
Good. And like one exciting thing that I wanted to mention is with some of them, like the Slate VMS is just, or the ML1 is a mic, and you can select different analog, like different mics that it models. There are systems out there like the Townsend Lab Sphere or the Antelope Edge Duo, I think, that have like a double diaphragm, double membrane, and you can, with those mics, actually change the polar pattern after the fact. So you can record it and then decide if you want omnicardioid or whatever. And you can also, which is very cool, and you can also make, even you can, with the Townsend at least, I think, you can even make stereo recordings with one mic. So that's pretty cool. So it's like a whole new set of opportunities. I don't know. I like committing to things, so I don't like to wait until to make those decisions. But
yeah,
sometimes I just think it's a cool thing to play with, and sometimes maybe this can save a recording. I don't know. They are not cheap anyway, so but if you want the ultimate flexibility weapon thing, then the Townsend Lab Sphere or the Edge Duo or something like that will do the trick. And then there is another new category of mics that is doing even more than just modeling. For example, the Axino Synergy Core by Antelope, which looks pretty exciting to me. I don't know. I want one so I can try it. I just saw it and think it's really, really interesting, the concept, because it's an audio interface and mic and modeling thing in one piece of gear. So it's a USB mic, but it also has the headphone out and like the monitor volume control and stuff like that on the mic. It has obviously the mic, so you don't need an interface anymore. It gives you the modeling of different mic models, and it also comes with a plugin suite, like sort of the Apollo stuff or the interfaces by Antelope, where you can record through preamp models, emulations, or compressors. Yeah, it's just an all-in-one recording tool at a very interesting price point. And yeah, I don't know, maybe one of you listeners, maybe you've tried it and want to let us know if you like it.
Yeah,
I just think it's an interesting category of gear that keeps improving a lot, and yeah, they're coming out with new stuff.
It's a very good idea, and it's perfect for like the bedroom pop producers where you only need that one mic and you don't even really need an interface because this will do it for you. And so if you're mostly MIDI and stuff like that, what a great option. And also for like the touring musician to have something to bring on the road. Perfect solution for that too.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the other stuff. So this was pretty long because mics are just so important. It's where it all starts, and it's really, yeah, it's the first thing in the signal chain and the most important thing. Everything else now is not as important. So DI boxes, again, at the source, that's where it starts. But we both I think that you only need a DI box if your interface input doesn't cut it, or if you want to compare it and see what works better.
Yeah.
There are budget ones that sometimes work great, but oftentimes they're not better than what you already have in your interface. And then there are more expensive ones, which can be worth the investment.
Yeah. It almost comes down to using your interface and getting an active DI in a way. Because your interface is going to be a passive DI, and having an active one is handy because a lot of people play with passive pickups and they just definitely do better with active DIs generally. So if your interface has a halfway decent one, you can probably skip this step for the time being until you've got the extra budget. Like we're building a studio on a budget, so the job's kind of done with the interface. But if you do want to get some, we got some options for you. I'm a big fan of the company Radial, and they make budget ones and higher end ones. You can kind of find anything in there, and their stuff's just built like a tank. So it's kind of like a lifetime purchase, which is great. And then you've got Palmer here, and I actually haven't tried that, but you seem to quite like them, eh?
Yeah. I don't know if they are a thing in the US or Canada. I think they are. Maybe they are even a German company. I'm not really sure. But They make budget DI boxes. They are pretty popular in the live sound industry here. They make cheap ones that actually are pretty decent. So might be worth trying. I don't think they're spectacular and like much better than what your interface does, but they are cool. So you can try them. You can't go wrong. There is a company called DIY Recording Equipment. It's DIYrecordingequipment.com. They sell kits where you can build your own DI boxes. And I haven't tried those, but I know a lot of people who use them and swear by them. They seem to be great. I'm not like much into building gear, but if you are that person, you can save some money here, I think, and buy really high quality components and build your own active or passive DI box. So those DIY RE, I think they're called, DIY Recording Equipment, might be worth looking at.
Definitely could be a fun project.
Yeah. And then in the upper category, that's where I think it really makes a difference, and where every single time I compared it to an interface, the DI box is won. And my recommendations are personally, number one recommendation is the Countryman Type 85 active DI box. I just love how that sounds. Directly followed by the Rupert Neve RN-DI. It's almost like, it's the same thing, probably a blind test. I don't know if I could tell. And then there is one that I forgot here on the list, and that is, oh God, I forgot it right now while I was talking. So there's the Countryman, there is the Rupert Neve, and the Avalon DI.
Oh yeah,
this one's great as well.
That is a very expensive one, but it's just fantastic.
Yep,
you would be happy with that. Warm Audio makes one as well. We did want to mention one in specific called the Little Labs Red Eye, because we have a pretty heavy guitar audience. A lot of our audience are guitar people, and this is like an all-in-one guitar recording solution. It's like a splitter, it's a DI box, it's a reamper,
active and passive, depending on
active
where
and
you plug
passive.
it in.
It's got phase stuff going on. It's a really fantastic unit. That's definitely a buy once, cry once situation for guitar stuff. And again, built like a literal tank. You could always use it for self-defense if you needed.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that's basically it. People ask that question all the time for whatever reason. Like they were really worried about their DIs, which is good. I mean, they want to get it right. But I think there's no way around comparing it, and you probably want to buy a more expensive one to make it worth the investment.
Right, yeah. I use the Radial J48, and you can find those, in Canada, you find them used for crazy good prices, and I think they're just great as well.
Okay.
All right.
Now the interface.
Interfaces.
The heart of your home studio, basically. The in and out, the interface between your computer and the outside world.
Yeah. I just convinced a band to upgrade to an Apollo Twin, and from a Focusrite. They're handling their own vocal recording, so I was like, do it. It could be better.
I like the Apollos, and I like Universal Audio plugins, of course. But I'm still I don't have one, and the reason is I have a UAD satellite thing from 2010 or so that I still use for the plugins. I don't have an interface of them though, because I don't know. I don't want to spend money on like these chips that are now almost 15 years old or so.
They're old,
and they still work, and the plugins are great. So it's not really about the hardware. But I don't know. I always have. I don't know. It's just you need this thing. You need to pay for this hardware as a giant dongle when every decent computer could actually handle the plugins. So I don't really see the point. It seems to be very difficult to port those plugins over to a native system. That's the main reason, I think. They just don't work without those Shark chips. That's what I've been told. But
the issue you're running into though is kind of from a mixer standpoint, where you want to run a lot of stuff. As a tracking interface, the chips are plenty, right? Because you're especially in a Twin, you're probably running one or two plugins, right? And it's going to handle that no problem. And then letting you record through that, or just monitor through it, whatever, in the like no latency situation. So I think they make an extremely awesome recording system.
Yeah, that's the
platform, right? But as far as using that stuff for mixing, I agree. I have so many DSP chips now that I can, but it's kind of like a pain in the ass. I want to be able to open up the session without my interface sometimes, so I kind of like don't always try to use them in the mix, but I track through them every single time.
Yeah, that's the main thing. I think so. I tend to not use them as well for that reason. If I want to check a mix at home and I don't have my satellite with me, it's a pain. But I would love to track through those and without latency and stuff. So that's really great. Yeah. So yeah, the Apollo is definitely still a recommendation. So I just wanted to say that I just wanted to know how you see that, because the other weird thing is I've been worried for a couple of years now that when I buy an Apollo, the next day U83 will come out or whatever on new chips, and it hasn't happened for like 4 years or so now. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like the X series, which I just got, just came out like less than 6 months ago now, I think.
Yeah.
So I think it's a while off still, but they just keep putting more chips. Like there's 6 of them in the X series now, I think.
No.
Where like originally there was 1.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the reason I brought it up though, and that I got the band to upgrade to it, is because it's kind of hard to say. I think that this is a great thing to cry once, buy once kind of thing. Buy once, cry once. Because there's so much in it. You know, it's kind of your hub, it's your mothership, it's your converters, it's everything in a way. But you can still make a great record with a really cheap one. So like the audiophile in me just wants people to like bite the bullet and go for like an Apollo and up kind of quality. But you definitely don't have to. It pains me to say it, but you don't have to. You can get away with these budget ones that we're going to list off here. And worth noting though that when we're talking about these budget ones, we're talking about the most recent iterations of them, which have come a long way. So for example, going with Focusrite, you can get their Scarlett series, and they have a whole range. Like we've got the 18i20 here, which is going to get you through a drum kit, but they have smaller ones as well. And all of their 3rd gen ones, their newest ones, the converters are all much better than they used to be, and the preamps are a little better too. So it's come a long way. Just wanted to mention that if you're going for one of those Focusrites, I'd really recommend one of the newer ones. They're meant to be quite an improvement. And I used to have one of the older ones.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Also, the newer ones have USB-C most of the time, and with all the different manufacturers, but Focusrite definitely. And yeah, agreed. Like basically everything we mentioned here, even the more expensive stuff, could be considered budget, because when you compare it to a commercial studio, this is all like budget stuff. But this, like, if you compare an Apollo to the Focusrite, it's even a step below that, but still really great. Like it's entry level stuff that like the minimum you need to record a drum kit, but it still sounds really great. And I think engineers like 30 years ago would have killed to have preamps and converters like that, you know? So
yes, definitely.
Yeah, and they have made great records with the early digital stuff, so 20, 30 years ago. So the Focusrite Scarlett, definitely recommendation. PreSonus makes great interfaces. I've used their interfaces for those were the first ones that I used like lots of years ago. But the current ones are pretty great as well. Then Audient makes great stuff. The Audient interfaces are rock solid and super good preamps also. There is a small one by SSL even. Like this doesn't sound like budget, but it's not really expensive. It's a 2-channel, I think 2 ins and 4 outs maybe or so, 2 ins, 2 outs, something like that. Interface that sounds pretty decent. There is by the company who that does Cubase, the DAW, Steinberg. They make the UR series. I have the UR22, but an older one. The new ones are much better. The UR816C I've listed here. It's also like 8 ins, and I think you can make it up to 16 with an ADAT or so. And it has a USB-C. You can even switch transformers in and out, if I'm not wrong. Like they have added options like that lately. And like this stuff has come a long way. Cool. And so whatever you choose, those are all the same. The funny thing is, many of these, if not all, are using the same converter chips and sometimes even the same preamps, because these are basically components that everybody buys and uses in their interfaces. And there are plenty of comparisons or like videos and articles on the internet where they open up those boxes and compare what's inside. And especially the converters, it's just always the latest generation of like these budget converters, and they are in every single interface. So it's a matter of features and in and outs more than anything. Just look at how many channels you need, look at the features, look at your monitoring needs, and then just buy the one that has everything you need, and like look for how stable they are. Maybe like look for some reviews of customers. You don't want a nightmare driver or anything. But when it comes to the actual sound quality, they are pretty much identical.
Yeah, this is really kind of an area where I would actually recommend just going with brand trust. And like Focusrite, for example, is a really trustworthy brand. They're also really prevalent in like the very high end of converters and stuff like that. So there's kind of just like a built-in, they know what they're doing, trust there.
Yeah.
And they've been around for a long time, so their customer support's obviously not trash. Stuff like that. There's just like a little bit of, if I buy something from them, it's going to work.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Where like I'm going to throw Roland under the bus. They are not really known for their recording stuff, but they keep putting out crappy interfaces, and
yes.
I keep being sad when people buy them.
Yes, there are a couple of companies like that that I never recommend. Yeah. People ask about them all the time for some reason, but I never really recommend them.
Yeah, it's just not their game. I mean, they make great guitar pedals and stuff like that, and keyboards, but the recording interfaces just haven't been their thing. So, steer clear. The drivers won't be up to date and stuff like that. You can run into hassles.
Exactly. So, yeah. Those were our recommendations. There are more, as in any category, but these are a great starting point. Now, in the upper category, there's a competitor to the Apollo that I want to mention, and I really like the Apollos, and it's the same issue that I have with the others as well. And that is, there is Antelope, for example, who make also DSP powered and interfaces where you can run plugins, analog emulations that you can record through. It's the same issue. You have this dongle that you need to use if you want to use the plugins in your mix. But if you want to record through something with less than 1 millisecond latency, then something like that's what they claim. That's what you can do with those sort of interfaces. So the Apollo or the Antelope interfaces are similar, I think, from a price perspective. Maybe Antelope is...
I think the Apollos are a little more expensive, so I've been really curious to try out the Antelopes.
Yeah. They have the Sengo Synergy, I think is the most affordable one at around 500 euros or so.
That's an 8-channel, I think, right?
Nope, 2 inputs.
Oh, okay.
And that's just a small one, actually. That's why. But they have bigger ones with more channels that are more affordable than the Apollos. But with the smaller interfaces, I think it's pretty much the same or around the same. I don't know. But I use an Antelope converter in my studio that I really love. I love how the converter sounds. I don't really use the interface in it because I just run the digital out to my interface, but I use it as a converter, standalone converter, and I've been doing so for 7 years now, the same converter, and it's still amazing. And so I really like the Antelope stuff. I can't really say much about their interfaces or driver stability or anything like that because I just use it as a converter, but I think their modeling stuff looks pretty good, and the reviews have been pretty good. The feature set is exciting. So if you're looking for an Apollo alternative, you can look into that. Both are great, I assume. So
awesome. All right. What do we got left? Benny, should this be a 2-part episode? What do you think?
I was thinking the same, actually. Yeah, it probably should. So we've covered the whole signal chain up to the computer, basically, and now we should do a part 2 where we talk about what's happening in the computer and what's coming out of the computer. That would actually be a good point to wrap it up.
Cool.
Yeah, you're totally right.
I think so, because there's so much to go through still. So
yeah, and we kind of lost our we wanted to do a how to build a home recording studio for X amount of dollar or on a budget and stuff like that. Now we've covered all the price ranges,
everything.
But it's so it's so subjective, and everything is on a budget, if you will. So Let's just stop here. I think we still gave you a lot of recommendations, and we always said what's cheaper, what's more expensive.
Totally.
And we will do a part 2. If you wanna have everything we said right now in a little more organized form and with a clear list a clear checklist you can go through with the couple
much more organized
form with a couple of recommendations and really budget stuff and stuff like that. Then you go to the selfrecordingband.com/gear guide and download that. Next week, we're going to talk about all that's left here. And that is monitoring your DAW, headphones, some plugins
guitar
that you might need for
solutions.
Recording, how you control MIDI stuff, utility things you might need. So that's going to be next episode.
Definitely. Yeah. And one benefit of us going over not just the budget stuff is that if our listeners are like most musicians and watch used marketplaces like crazy for gear deals, you might see something that would have been previously out of your budget, but find it used for a good deal or something. You kind of are learning what to watch for. and this is all really good, trustworthy gear.
Oh yeah, absolutely agreed. Now, one thing I need to add to this episode, not because this is this episode, but I just need to add it. We are doing, and this is not relevant if you're listening to this like months from now, but I want to say it right now. If you are not in our Facebook community, you want to join that, and you go to the selfrecordingband.com/community. And also, you want to join our mailing list, because what we're doing right now is we're going to do a meetup very soon. We're going to do a video Zoom meeting where we're going to hang out, get to know each other, and do some mix or production critiques and talk about songs that you submit. Some of our community members already submitted songs, so already I think I got 5 already that we can talk about. And the one cool thing that I also offered and decided to do is we're not only doing this meeting and doing the critiques, but out of all the submissions that I get, I will just pick one and I will do a mix for free, and I will record that mix. I will stream the mix and I will record that mix. And so you can see what I do with that track. I will answer questions. I try to answer questions live. I try to show you what actually happens after you send a track off to mixing. And I just wanted to do it for free and in return get a great piece of content that I can then share with you. So that's awesome. What's going to happen. And if you want to be a part of that, go to the selfrecordingband.com/community or download one of our free guides and land on our email list. And then you'll know as well when that goes down.
Awesome.
See you next week then.
All right. Yeah, we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye.